Welcome to 102 Hours, the channel dedicated to peeling back the layers of the world's darkest and most perplexing true crime stories. Today, we journey into a case that shattered the very foundation of trust millions placed in everyday medicine, the infamous Tylenol murders. Imagine reaching for a simple painkiller, something so routine and familiar, only to have that act turn fatal. In the fall of 1982, a sinister and calculated act of poisoning sent waves of terror rippling across the United States, claiming innocent lives and igniting one of the most massive consumer product recalls in history. But this story is more than just about poison. It's a haunting tale of fear unleashed in the most unsuspecting way, of corporate crisis management under fire, and of a relentless, shadowy killer who vanished into the night, leaving behind questions that remain unanswered to this day. Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the harrowing events, chilling investigation, and enduring mystery of the Tylenol murders, a cautionary tale that forever changed how we protect ourselves and what we trust. Let's get started. In the crisp autumn of 1982, as the leaves turned and the days grew shorter, an invisible terror began to creep quietly into the heart of America. It wasn't a shadow lurking in dark alleys or a faceless stranger stalking the night, it was something far more insidious, hidden in plain sight on countless pharmacy shelves. People reached for a familiar bottle of Tylenol, trusting it as a harmless remedy to soothe headaches, ease fevers, or calm the aches of daily life. But within those ordinary capsules lay a deadly secret. 7 people, from diverse backgrounds and ages, were suddenly and inexplicably felled, not by disease, but by poison. The poison was cyanide, a substance so lethal that even a tiny amount could end a life within minutes. And the capsules? They had been tampered with, laced deliberately to kill unsuspecting victims. The very product millions relied on became a weapon of silent death. This was no random accident or tragic mistake. It was a calculated, premeditated act of terror, a crime so chilling and brazen it shattered the nation's trust, instilled widespread panic, and launched one of the most extensive investigations in history. How did the killer evade capture? What drove someone to sabotage everyday medicine with such deadly intent? And why, despite the scale of the crime, was justice never fully realized? Tonight, we unravel the dark enigma of the Tylenol murders, a case that transformed consumer safety laws and left an indelible scar on the American psyche. In the autumn of 1982, as the Midwest settled into the rhythms of daily life, an unseen menace began to unravel the fabric of American consumer confidence. It started inconspicuously enough, people turning to a trusted remedy, extra-strength Tylenol capsules, to relieve pain and ailments. But in Chicago and its surrounding suburbs, a deadly plot was unfolding. The first victim, Mary Kellerman, a bright and active 12-year-old girl, took her medication on the morning of September 29th. Within minutes, she was overcome by violent convulsions and respiratory failure. The suddenness and severity of her symptoms bewildered doctors and family alike. At first, her death was mistaken for an allergic reaction or accidental poisoning. However, in the days that followed, a pattern emerged. Victims from diverse backgrounds, ranging from young students to working professionals, died under eerily similar circumstances. James Lewis, Adam Janis, Stanley Janis, Mary Reiner, and Paula Prince, each had taken the same brand of Tylenol capsules before their unexplained deaths. The common thread was unmistakable: cyanide-laced medication. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Grocery stores and pharmacies reported empty shelves as terrified customers abandoned over-the-counter painkillers en masse. The media frenzy intensified, with news broadcasts detailing the mysterious deaths, fueling public paranoia. Parents kept a watchful eye over their children, and households scrutinized their medicine cabinets as never before. Investigators faced an extraordinary challenge. The tampering wasn't limited to a single batch or shipment. Capsules from multiple stores were found contaminated, indicating the perpetrator struck after the products had left Johnson & Johnson's manufacturing plants. This meant the killer had infiltrated the retail supply chain, a terrifying prospect that transformed everyday shopping into a potential death sentence. Without the aid of modern surveillance technologies, police relied on traditional detective work, canvassing neighborhoods, reviewing purchase records, and interviewing store employees and witnesses. The lack of direct evidence complicated efforts to identify a suspect. It was a race against time, as more lives hung in the balance. In response to the crisis, Johnson & Johnson took unprecedented action. On October 1, the company initiated a nationwide recall of approximately 31 million bottles of Tylenol capsules, an act of corporate responsibility that cost millions but was critical to halting the threat. They also pioneered tamper-evident packaging measures, including foil seals and plastic bottles, setting new industry standards that remain today. Meanwhile, the FBI joined forces with local law enforcement and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, pooling resources and expertise in a concerted effort to find the perpetrator. The investigation broadened beyond Chicago, tracking leads across state lines and considering possibilities ranging from a lone individual seeking chaos to more sinister motives such as extortion or political statement. Among the most significant developments was the appearance of a ransom letter sent to Johnson & Johnson, demanding $1 million to stop the poisonings. James William Lewis, who sent the letter, was later arrested and convicted of extortion, but forensic evidence linking him directly to the poisonings was never found. His involvement remains a controversial and debated aspect of the case. As the investigation wore on, the public's fear gradually evolved into vigilance. Media coverage heightened awareness but also spawned rumors and copycat threats, complicating law enforcement efforts. The case exposed glaring vulnerabilities in product security, consumer trust, and crisis management. Despite exhaustive efforts, the killer was never apprehended, and the case officially remains unsolved. The Tylenol murders stand as a haunting example of how ordinary trust can be weaponized and how a single criminal act can ripple through society, catalyzing lasting changes in public safety and corporate responsibility. What makes the Tylenol murders so chilling, and uniquely confounding, is that the killer never left behind the usual breadcrumbs: no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no direct confessions. Instead, this case is a haunting lesson in how a criminal can weaponize trust itself. Let's start with the method of attack: the cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules. Think about it for a moment: tampering with a product already sealed and distributed nationwide, slipping poison into bottles sitting quietly on store shelves. This wasn't a crime of passion or impulse, it was cold, calculated, and designed to maximize fear. The killer understood the psychology of consumers, knowing that by targeting a beloved, everyday product, he could instill nationwide panic without ever having to be physically close to his victims. Now, consider the investigator's dilemma. In 1982, surveillance cameras were scarce, product packaging didn't have tamper-evident seals, and forensic science was nowhere near as advanced as today. Tracking a killer who operated anonymously by poisoning random bottles scattered across different stores was like searching for a ghost in a sprawling maze. Police had to rely heavily on traditional detective work, interviewing witnesses, analyzing purchase patterns, and hoping for a slip-up. One of the few leads came in the form of a ransom letter sent to Johnson & Johnson by a man named James William Lewis. He claimed responsibility and demanded a ransom, but his letter also raised questions. Was he the true mastermind or a desperate opportunist seeking attention amid chaos? Lewis was convicted of extortion but never definitively linked to the actual poisonings. This ambiguity leaves us wondering how often the noise around high-profile crimes distracts from finding the real culprit. Theories abound about the killer's identity and motive. Some experts suggest a disgruntled employee at a manufacturing or distribution center who wanted revenge. Others propose a psychopathic individual who sought power through anonymous violence. There's even speculation about copycats, people inspired by media coverage who tried to replicate the crime. What's clear is that the randomness of victims, from children to adults, points to a killer interested not in personal vendettas but in spreading terror and disruption. Personally, when I reflect on this case, I'm struck by the terrifying vulnerability it exposed. We often take for granted the safety of everyday items, the medicine we swallow, the food we eat. The Tylenol murders shattered that illusion. It was a stark reminder that trust can be fragile and easily exploited. This case also marks a turning point in consumer protection. The introduction of tamper-evident packaging, now standard worldwide, owes its origins to the lessons learned from this tragedy. While we may never know the killer's identity, the legacy of this case is a safer marketplace for all of us. So, when you pick up a bottle of medicine today, spare a thought for those lost in 1982 and the invisible line of defense between safety and horror that was forged in their memory. The psychology of the Tylenol killer is a chilling enigma. Unlike many serial killers driven by personal vendettas or compulsions, this perpetrator's calculated tampering with a trusted consumer product speaks to a mindset steeped in control, fear, and anonymity. To poison an entire community through everyday medicine requires not only knowledge of toxic substances but also an unsettling detachment from human life. This was not an impulsive act of violence, it was cold, premeditated, and designed to maximize terror on a massive scale. The killer weaponized trust itself, exploiting the intimate relationship people have with their health and well-being. Psychologists analyzing this case suggest the perpetrator likely possessed traits of a highly organized offender, someone who planned meticulously, understood the impact of his actions, and remained emotionally detached. The randomness of the victims points to a lack of personal motive. Instead, the desire seems to have been to instill fear and chaos, asserting power from the shadows without ever revealing oneself. From the law enforcement perspective, the Tylenol murders presented unprecedented challenges. This was a crime that blurred the lines between conventional homicide and product sabotage, a scenario that forced investigators to think beyond traditional methods. The collaborative effort between the Chicago Police, FBI, and FDA demonstrated the emerging importance of interagency cooperation in complex cases. Investigators utilized the best forensic tools available at the time. Toxicology reports identified cyanide as the lethal agent, and meticulous tracking of distribution channels sought to isolate points of tampering. Yet, despite these efforts, the investigation was hampered by technological limitations: no CCTV footage, no DNA evidence, and little physical trace left by the killer. The murderer's ability to operate anonymously within the retail supply chain created a nearly invisible crime scene spanning multiple locations. What stands out is the persistence and innovation of the investigative teams. They pioneered new protocols for consumer product safety, influenced future tampering investigations, and reshaped corporate crisis management practices. The case was a brutal learning experience that changed how law enforcement and corporations respond to public threats. Reflecting on the investigation, one cannot help but admire the resilience of those who refuse to let fear paralyze them. Yet, the frustration of never apprehending the culprit also underscores the limits of human endeavor in the face of cold, calculated evil. In many ways, the Tylenol murders exemplify a terrifying duality: the killer's invisible menace and the dogged pursuit of justice. It is a stark reminder of how ordinary life can be shattered by extraordinary malice, and how those sworn to protect must adapt and persevere even when the enemy is faceless. Decades have passed since the Tylenol murders shook a nation's sense of security, yet the shadows of that terrifying autumn still linger. The killer's identity remains elusive, a haunting reminder of how vulnerability can be weaponized in the most unexpected ways. What drove this anonymous perpetrator to turn a trusted medicine into an instrument of death? Was it a desire for chaos, personal vendetta, or a sinister game of control? Could justice still be served, even after all these years? As we reflect on this chilling chapter, we invite you to join the conversation. Share your theories, questions, or insights about the Tylenol murders. Together, let's keep the memory alive and honor the victims by seeking truth. Thank you for watching 102 Hours. If this story captivated you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. Until next time, stay curious, and stay vigilant.